Hello,
I'm Jen,
I'm Kimberly.
and this is That Vegan Morning Show.
Good morning, Jen.
Good morning, Kimberly. We are back
We
after a little
are
2 week
back.
break.
Season 2.
Season 2. Look at us. Wow. Can
I
you
know,
believe we're on
right?
our second season?
So exciting. I can't believe it. I'm so glad.
Me too. And I'm excited. I've been reviewing, the stuff that we did last year. And I'm just really excited to see where we go this year. I know it's going to be
Me
amazing.
too. Yes. So, one of the things that we talked about in our last episode, our season 1 finale, was preparing for the new year. And we also talked about how we both choose a word to kind of guide us, or a theme, or kind of a phrase to guide us through the year to make sure that we're moving along on the path we want to. We're making the choices that are serving us instead of just kind of floating through life. Have you chosen a word or a theme for 2026, Jen?
Yeah, Kimberly, I'm so glad that you suggested we talk about this and open up our show with this because, the New Year's resolution thing just doesn't work, right? I feel like it always sets me up for failure and disappointment.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But instead focusing on aligned actions that fit a theme. So it's like, even maybe if I didn't necessarily lose the weight or make the money or whatever it is, if I did actions that just supported that theme, I felt like I accomplished something.
Yeah.
So this year, quick little preface. Last year my theme was about not hiding anymore. And during that time, I really put myself out there a lot more. And that set me up for this theme because I realized what's been holding me back is I still have these shitty beliefs that I'm not worthy and I'm not enough. So I've had to challenge that to show up more. So now I want to focus on specifically the root of that. So my theme is I am worthy, I am enough. And so I'm going to be doing things to cultivate that theme. And so I feel like that's where I am this year. And yeah, what about you?
I love that. And you are worthy and you are enough.
Thank you, Kimberly.
So my word for this year, I don't remember what my word for last year was. I meant to go back and check my blogs because I definitely wrote about it. Maybe it was commit. That
Okay.
might have been last year, but I don't want to commit to that because I'm not sure that's right. Um, and I did a lot of things last year that I am really excited about and proud of, and probably didn't do some things that maybe I thought when the year started I was going to. So this year, my word is mastery. And I chose
Ooh.
that, right? I chose that because I feel like I'm doing a lot of things and now it's time to level up. So I don't necessarily want to add anything new, but it's about taking what I'm doing and being better at it and working on those skills. And while I say that I don't want to add anything new, I actually did add something new at the end of last year. I joined a yoga teacher training, and so I'm working on that. But there is still mastery involved in that. By the time I'm done, I'll be able to write a yoga class and lead one of them. And so that is very exciting. But also leveling up my podcast, showing up here better, practicing my skills, giving talks out in the world, and leveling up my public speaking. So this year is all about taking what I'm doing and moving to that next level. So each time I'm making a decision, I'll be able to ask myself, is this going to move this piece forward? Am I going to get better at whatever this is, even just a little bit by doing this? And I feel like that's really going to guide me and help me move toward mastery.
I love all of that. And yeah, and there's something different about this. So let's say hypothetically your word was commit, which I remember last year you talking about, wanting to commit more to things and be consistent. And so I seen you do that a lot, last year, just showing up more and committing more to things and being consistent. And I feel like mastery kind of elevates all. It's like there's like an elevation to that, right? Because it's
Yeah.
so easy to be scattered and want to do all of the things,
Oh, yeah.
but it takes being really intentional to master things, right? And then we
Mhm.
actually end up getting better if we're, instead of doing more and doing a whole bunch of things, if we focus on a handful of things and really take the time to master them, there's something more empowering about that. And I feel like it also, leads to the most change, the most impact too.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'm excited to
Thank
see
you.
how our journeys with our themes
Me
goes this
too.
year.
Yeah. Awesome. So, for anyone watching and you want to share what you've decided your word or theme for 2026 is, please let us know in the comments. Even if you're watching the replay, Jen and I will be back here to check in to see what you have to say and to chat with you there.
Yeah.
So, our big topic for today.
Ooh, we got a big topic.
We do. And it wasn't even, I don't even remember what the original thing we thought we were going to talk about because this was so big. We were like, we've got to just push things off and we need to talk about this. And, we've touched on, I think, the idea of ex vegans and what does it mean to be an ex vegan. But this one was so big. So, like, we'll share the reason why we're talking about this, but I think our conversation really is not going to be so focused on the person who prompted this because we don't know her, we don't have her background, but we can kind of talk about in a more general way maybe why this happens. And something super exciting that we have with to share with you today is that we were able to get an audio clip from the vegan psychologist Claire Mann, the woman who she coined the term Vistopia, which is the feeling of being vegan, that anguish of being vegan in a non-vegan world. And so she shares her thoughts too on why this happens and what can lead to someone who was so dedicated to the vegan movement. This person who prompted this, she's been vegan for 30 years. And not just like, I eat plants, I'm a plant-based eater. No, she was a dedicated vegan activist for 30 years. She was the communications director for Veganuary. And
Mhm.
now she has recently announced that she's working with a different organization. And like, I'm not going to mention these. You can do Googling if you want, because I don't want to drive traffic to that organization's website. I don't want to give them more when they're working against us, not us in particular, but us vegans as a whole. But they
Yeah.
are launching or have launched, I haven't checked, a Forget Veganuary campaign. So
Mhm.
totally everything that she had worked on and worked for 30 years, she has turned her back. And now the idea that if you keep eating animals, excuse me, but you are donating to animal welfare charities, this offsets the fact that you are eating animals. And the explanation that I have seen is that you can only eat so many less animals. Most of us eat 3, maybe 4 times a day. So each person only has 3 to 4 times a day that they could not eat animals. But if you're donating to an animal welfare charity, I didn't say anything about animal rights charities, animal welfare charities, then that has unlimited potential because you could donate an unlimited amount when you pool everyone together who's eating animals and donating. The first thought I had was vegans can donate. So we have the ability to donate plus not eat them. That makes more sense to me. But so I've been really kind of stuck trying to figure out what the logic is here and what would make someone knowing what she knows about the animal agriculture industry and how it operates and the suffering that is involved and just knowing what consuming animals contributes to. Billions of land animals alone are killed every year for people to eat them. I do not see how donating to animal welfare charities, where the focus is to just make life better for the animals, not to stop exploiting them, I do not see how that brings together an idea that we are doing better for the animals. And it was really just disappointing. And then not only to have this idea that you're donating and still eating animals, but then to actively work against a campaign and an organization that has set out to show people that it is possible to be vegan, that you can spend a month learning and growing and understanding why people have made that choice and why people go vegan and then what it takes to stay vegan. And I'm not saying that that's easy because it's not. We are a minority. The vegans of the world are a small group, but that's why we're trying to change that. That's why we're trying to encourage people to go vegan. So it's hard though when you are feeling maybe not connected, if you don't have community. We are tribal, a tribal species. We do best when we come together and we can work together and grow and change together. So sometimes when you're the only vegan, it can be really hard. And so you need to reach out. And thankfully, we have things like the internet so that we can connect with people who are not in our immediate space that allow us that connection and we're able to be in community. But we can't, but when we feel disconnected, it makes sense that maybe these decisions to be different are hard. But this person was not disconnected from the community. She was so connected to the community, working within it, engaged in different activities. And so I don't know. So maybe we check with the expert. So I'm just going to play a little bit of the clip from Claire Mann, and then I'll come back and chat about what she said here. And I don't know. We'll see where it goes. So please, if you're watching the replay or you are tuning in live, please, comment and let us know what you think about what Claire has to say. So we're going to go to a little bit of Claire's clip and then we'll have a chat.
There are different reactions when we hear that someone is no longer vegan, especially on the face of it where they've been vegan or an animal activist for some time. Now, reactions are strongly felt in both the vegan and the non-vegan community. In terms of the non-vegan community, the recent example of Tony Vannelli actually reached the front page of the Daily Mail. When we look on social media about posts and comments about this, of course, meat eaters have a heyday. They say it's not normal being vegan. Common sense has prevailed at last, a sense of relief almost, that they're not perfect after all, those vegans, and perhaps assuaging the guilt of them eating animals. And I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, what's the vegan's reaction? There's often sadness, there's anger. The person was never vegan anyway. A sort of despair. What's the point? Veganism seems to be losing popularity. Will the animals ever be free? And when particularly a well-known activist, maybe someone who's been a hero of yours or a friend or a colleague, this becomes even more difficult.
So my first thought is, yeah, I feel like she has betrayed vegans. And not even vegans, really. First, she's betrayed the animals, and then she's betrayed vegans. What are your thoughts? So I know, Jen, we lost you for a minute. I kept going. And, please share your thoughts. What do you think about what Claire just said or anything leading up to that?
Well, Kimberly, first of all, thanks for covering while my Wi-Fi dropped for a couple minutes. and I popped back up at the perfect time when you're playing the clip. So yeah, I also had the same reaction. You're the one who brought this to my attention. And yeah, you really feel it in your heart, especially someone who's been vegan for so long and has been championing the cause and then totally does a 180.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It feels like such a betrayal. Because I know for me, I've been vegan almost 9 years and I could never go back.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
you?
No, I feel so confident in that as well. I just cannot imagine a situation where all of those animal lives suddenly mean less than what I'm consuming. There's just not, I don't see it happening. And I like that Claire makes the point too that non-vegans, like this really creates some confusion. So either they're celebrating, like she said, oh, veganism, isn't practical, it's not a natural, it's not possible. And this is proof that this woman who did it for 30 years is like, never mind, I'm not doing that anymore. And then for people who were curious about it, I feel like it does lead to some confusion where they're going to be like, maybe this isn't the right thing to do, and start seeking out maybe something that makes it easier for them to continue to consume animals instead of digging in a little deeper, and maybe considering finding community and digging in a little more, with looking into veganism a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I feel like it sends the wrong message. And I think there's been a lot of focus lately, with restaurants, changing their menus back to non-vegan and or businesses having to close down. People use that and it makes it look like, well, veganism, it's not profitable, which again, if you're vegan for the right reasons, I feel like you're not going to care about the profit piece. You'll
Mhm.
find a way to make it work because there are vegan businesses who do make it work.
Mhm.
The thing here is change takes time, right? And so when you're pushing back against normal society thoughts and actions, there's going to be pushback. It's going to be harder. But I feel like there's actually been a lot of growth in the vegan movement in the 9 years that I've been vegan. And I feel like, there's a lot of these publicity stunts or things that we're just seeing on social media a lot, or clickbait articles to drive this narrative that causes a lot of confusion. We've talked
Mhm.
about before about the ex-vegans last year and how like celebrities only ate spinach, right?
Right.
And then they talked about how they almost died on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
You only ate spinach.
Right. What did you expect?
Right.
Do you want to go back to see what else Claire has to say?
Absolutely. This was such a great
Awesome.
clip.
I wonder if we'll ever see a vegan world. So what's going on here? Now let's have a look at the not yet vegan community, the non-vegans, so to speak. Always remember, of course, when a reaction is out of proportion to a threat, something else is going on. So there's a lot of sensationalism. It's front of the page. This person's been a vegan for many years and an activist, and look, they've actually fallen from grace. But have you ever noticed that when these sensationalist pieces are talked about, we don't really talk about animal cruelty, and they've gone back to championing that. They hold on fiercely to issues around eating meat and animals, habits, traditions, choices. I have a right to choose. And as I say, remember, when the reaction is out of proportion to the threat, something else is amiss. Of course, people don't get upset when someone says they've become gluten-free. You can't make me feel guilty just because I do eat gluten. Or, see, she's fallen from grace, she's back eating gluten. There's something much bigger going on, and we know that, and I believe it's a unconscious guilt that when this person is facing the reality of what happens to animals, they fiercely react to it and tend to focus on what they can eat or not eat. In the recent book, The Carnivore's Deception by
What are your thoughts on that?
I liked how she compared the gluten. She used the gluten as an example, right? And then I had a funny thought because how you feel about gluten-free pasta. We have a funny clip from something of that. I hope that I know you might share at one point with something. But I instantly thought about that. But I digress. Yeah, right. People don't because that's not a threat, right? And I think what it boils down to is right when people instantly say, oh, well, I'm a good person, right? Or have that thought when they eat meat, right? Or I love animals, yet they're eating meat. Like my husband and I, we watched this trashy show, Married at First Sight. It's addictive. And it's, I don't know, it's just good. But anyway, and not good at the same time. But there was one of the wives on there was like, wanted to do an animal rescue and help save like farm animals and stuff. Yes, she ate farm animals.
Oh my gosh. What?
So I was like ranting about this to my non-vegan husband. But like, so, right. So I'm using that as an example, right? You love animals, you want to help animals suffering, right? You want to do all of the things, but then you're eating them on your plate.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like that, so gluten doesn't threaten people's moral compass, where when moment you start questioning what people put on their plates and what people wear, right? And how else animals are used for their benefit, that feels like a judgment, right? And so people get defensive. And so I feel like that's where it gets very triggering. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And when I heard this piece of the clip, when Claire first sent it, I immediately thought of someone who is an influencer who you and I used to follow, and we stopped following because they started incorporating animals into their feed, saying they wanted to reach more people. So they were going to offer both and that you would have recipes for both. And I thought of this person again because very recently, just last month, they posted one of these why I'm no longer plant-based. And people were commenting and saying kind of what Claire had said, like, oh, you've gone back to championing animal cruelty. You don't, so you're good with that now. And the only response from this person was, it's such a shame that we can't have a meaningful conversation. It's unbelievable how angry people are about this, about my choice. But the people who are angry about it are not angry about you making a choice, about your choice. They're angry about who that choice impacts. And that's what I think is missing here in these people who get upset the same way Claire was talking about. They start to get defensive. It's because they're like, oh, you're making a judgment about me. This is about me. And what we keep trying to impart on people like this influencer and those who are, maybe even defending this woman who prompted our conversation, it's like, it's not about you. It's about the victims, about the animals who suffer and die for you to have, 5 minutes. Their entire life boils down to 5 to 10 minutes on someone's plate as someone consumes their body. That is absurd to me. And that is why vegans are upset by this, and why, according to this influencer, we can't have, civil conversations.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that influencer. I forgot about him.
As you should.
It's interesting. Before I became vegan and I was like veg curious, and I was going through that 2-year process of getting to that point where I was ready to commit, someone like him would have been appealing to me, right? Because it's like, it's coming off as he's meeting that middle ground, right? And when you're not locked into that commitment, again, I can only speak from my own personal experience, you don't see what the big deal is. I remember in high school, there was a girl who was a vegan in my economics class. I think it was my senior year. And I remember her talking to somebody about being vegan. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounds so difficult. Why would anyone want to do that? Right. But I was 18 and stupid. So, so now, but I think what non-vegans do not understand, and I try to try to connect this. I try to explain this to my husband, who's supportive and listens, but he doesn't get it the same way I get it, right?
Yeah.
Because when you are committed to veganism, you can't unknow the things that you know. And And especially after going through the Main Street Vegan Academy program with you
Mhm.
during the fall. Like, if anything, that I was already committed vegan, but like I'm even extra. I
Right.
don't know how I could have been extra committed before, but like now I'm like, I just can't. It just blows my mind how, like, when you know those things and that detail, and being a 30-year vegan, this
Mhm.
person would know those things that
Right.
we learn, right? So
Mhm.
I knowing all of that, I just I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like I like what Claire brought up. She brought up an important point. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what goes on in someone's psyche. We don't
Right.
know what is going on in someone's subconscious. We don't know what other things are happening in a person's personal life.
Mhm.
But as a vegan, like, again, I think it just hits us in the heart, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it feels like such a betrayal of
Mhm.
how could you do that?
Yeah. Yep. So let's see what else Claire has to say. And I just want to just make a point here. So she, just as I hit pause, she was moving into a different point, and she references a book which she calls The Carnivore's Deception. The title of the
Mhm.
book is actually The Omnivore's Deception by
Oh, okay.
philosopher John Sanbonmatsu. So just want to clear that up. Totally just just an error on Claire's part, but don't want people looking for the wrong title of the book.
Recent book, The Carnivore's Deception by John Sanbonmatsu. He gives 3 reasons why people are holding on to this myth of non-veganism and that it's okay to use and exploit animals. The first, he says, is our notion of human supremacy, that as human animals, we are supreme and we are much greater value and have sentience and afterlife or whatever. And in doing that, it means that other animals are there for us to decide who are our friends and who are for food or military exercises or clothing or to be tested on. And of course, from the most of the public, these sort of practices are removed, and so that people go to supermarkets and just see things on shelves or products they're buying, and that's why they react to being told you need to look a little closely. The second resistance he talks about is the humane myth, and that has some bearing here on some of these sort of comments in the newspaper. The humane myth is that we can have our cake and eat it, or in this case, you can have your meat and eat it. There is a way to be kind to animals, to give them a quality of life, even if they're suffering at the end and the ending of their lives is dramatically accelerated so that they're babies by the time they die. It's almost justified. Okay, that's the humane myth. But it's very short-lived, that one. The third one is what he calls the existential view of bad faith, which originally was highlighted by Jean-Paul Sartre, when he talks about bad faith is where we know something, and we really do know it, we have evidence for it, it's happening in front of our eyes, maybe it's a behavior we have, and yet we deny it's happening or something else is going on. So say, for instance, someone's married and they refuse to accept that their partner's having an affair. All the evidence is there. At a deep level, they know, they've almost been told by the partner, but they refuse to accept it. It's somehow as if we're able to do these mental gymnastics. And certainly when it comes to telling people what goes into their lifestyle choices, there is an enormous amount of bad faith, so to speak. Often people get this mixed up with cognitive dissonance, which is a very different thing, where there's a tendency for people to try to look at a way to keep their thoughts, feelings and behaviour all in alignment. But of course, if they say they love animals and they don't want to harm them, and yet we then tell them that they're causing pain and suffering, and we've got a disconnect, which is the dissonance. So the bad faith is a wonderful way of explaining this. So when a previously outspoken vegan like Tony Vanelli says that we can contribute to animal liberation more effectively by supporting charities and we don't need to change our own habits, that bad faith is reinforced. But as I said, it is very short-lived because it entails a sort of flimsy infrastructure, which means we're lying to oneself and one is constantly given mirrors and images. And that's why it's very important that the vegan keeps communicating these issues to make a disconnect between their espoused values and their actual actions.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. the lying to oneself. I mean, she said a lot of good stuff there. Those points from John are fantastic. And it does come down so much to these lies that we tell ourselves. We convince ourselves that what we're doing can't possibly be that bad, and that we take one extra step by donating to a charity, and somehow that absolves us of our involvement in all of these animal deaths.
Yeah, I liked what she said, mental gymnastics. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that sums it up perfectly,
Mhm.
right? And, going back to the example from the Married at First Sight person.
Right. Like, she
I
wants to
can't
save
believe
these
this show.
animals,
I
but
can't believe this show is actually helping my point here. Um, but yeah, right. It's like, I'm a good person. I'm doing all of these things, and then you're eating animal carcasses on your plate,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And probably not even thinking twice about it, right? And
Right.
and I liked how she brought up the difference between cognitive dissonance, right? Like, they're similar, but then cognitive dissonance is like another step further, right? With
Mhm.
all of that. And it's like, well, I'll throw charities at this. It makes me, I agree with her. There's probably something going on more behind the scenes that none of us will know because we can't read into someone's mind.
Mhm.
Um, there's something more going on here, because if you're a vegan for 30 years and you know the things you and I know, right?
Mhm.
You know that throwing money at charities is not the answer.
Right.
Throwing money at an animal sanctuary that's rescuing animals from slaughter, like, that's good. But again, and then getting back to what she was talking about, like, giving animals humane lives before, killing them, right?
Mhm.
Like, like my husband and I, we joke around about stuff but he'll joke around, or we'll have our little banter about things. That's how we maintain our sanity with our different views on veganism. but like, he'll be like, but it's grass fed. It was happy. And I'm like, it wasn't happy because it died.
Right. Yeah.
So, and then we don't continue from there. And then we just change the topic. But right, like, right, but that's the thing, right? And so I love that term mental gymnastics, because I feel like people, and again, I used to be one of these people at one point before I was vegan, right? Like, I used to be there. And it took me to going on my journey to the point where I knew what I knew, where I couldn't go back. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that, Kimberly?
Yeah, I agree. And the idea that we just kind of going back to what I said right when I paused it, that we do have the ability to lie to ourselves in a lot of ways. Claire gives an example unrelated to veganism about being in a relationship where your partner is having an affair and
Mhm.
you know it. And she didn't even say, like, you think it's happening. Your partner has pretty much told you it's happening, and you still are in denial, or you
Mhm.
you treat it as if it's not real. And I think that absolutely has to have a piece in this, because how do you truly understand, how have you seen the cruelty that is involved in consuming animals and using animals, exploiting them the way that we do, and then just be like, just donate some money, and it negates all of that, and it negates your involvement. There's got to be something going on where there is now a wall up, or there are lies being told to herself,
Mhm.
that allow her to move forward in this different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just driving back to the throwing, money. I feel like, there's meeting people where they are, but then also challenging them. And I seem to recall from the clip later on, she talks about that, where you don't have to be in a person's face and be rude. And
Mhm.
there are vegans that do go, and I feel like that's where, vegans get labeled as, extreme and angry. And yeah, we are angry because of, we know, again, I've used this example countless of times. It's like being in the Matrix. You realize what reality is.
Mhm.
And that's all about Claire's work as well, right? Is helping vegans navigate that feeling of knowing what you know and being alone, knowing that information.
Yeah.
And I feel like, of course it's easier to just go with the crowd and not challenge them. But
Mhm.
if we don't challenge the systems that are in place, they're never going to change.
Right.
And so instead of throwing money at charities to give animals happy-ish lives until they're on someone's plate, and doing things that seem like, oh, I am, meeting the, meat eaters where they are. And it's like, it's like, you can be a good person and eat meat, right? Claire was talking about having your cake and eating it too, right? Like,
Mhm.
and so I feel like there's something happened where she felt like she needed to pivot and create this messaging around, you can be a good person and still eat meat. You have freedom of choice, right? And that kind of messaging is so much easier, right, than challenging people.
Right.
So you can challenge non-vegans in a way that is not, they might feel uncomfortable, right? Because they're feeling like their values are being poked.
Mhm.
But you can do it in a way where you're not like in their face. Like you can just share, make it about you, why you're vegan, what you've learned in the journey, and hoping that can plant seeds along the way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's see what else she has to say.
Sounds good.
But what is it that makes an animal activist or vegan go back to eating animals, and even more, rubbishing veganism, and in this case, veganuary? I believe a lot of people attach themselves to many social justice causes. It's often a platform for a generalized outrage, but it's not always coming from a grounded place where values aligned and where it's focused on the alleviating the suffering of the victim. Rather, it's about the sort of alleviation of their own anxiety. So they go to Black Lives Matters rallies, climate change things, transgendered issues, gay and lesbian, and wars and things that are happening in the sort of general media. And it's not that they've even researched these or have focused on these as their life's work. They feel they have to get out there and express themselves. Now, I've also seen over the years I've been vegan is that a lot of animal activists become very passionate about ending the suffering of animals, and they see reflected back in to their own sort of own images of their own buried pain in many ways. Maybe a time when they were incarcerated, they were victims of abuse, they felt powerless, they were voiceless. And so if this is not conscious and the person doesn't realize it's their own pain that's speaking, instead of feeling deep empathy for the suffering of the animal or any other social justice cause, they try to reduce it, in this case by doing animal activism, but it's only temporarily assuaging what is going on because it doesn't solve the problems that they're carrying with them. Now, of course, people that are doing their life's work, that are committed to alleviating the suffering of non-human animals, that have been going for the long haul, this is very different than actually someone who emotionally feels they're just outraged and temporarily does this sort of work. Now, it's confusing in the case of Toni Vannelli because she has allegedly been a vegan for a very long time, and she's been on the circuit and spoken out to that. So we don't know what has actually happened, what sort of break she's had in her psychological makeup, to be honest. But there's also the issues of this sort of social online world that we live in. We have social media influencers. People get a moment of fame. They're on the front of the newspaper. There's narcissism involved. And I also say follow the money, because a lot of vegan influencers do actually get financed. And when that sort of falls away, as we see major changes of perhaps ostensibly vegan gatherings reducing or vegan products in some areas or restaurants reducing, the person may not have the kudos they had before. And then suddenly they get the opportunity for support to come from other areas, in this case, the meat and livestock industry probably, or the dairy industry, and some sensationalist journalists who are wanting to rev up the emotions of the vegans and non-vegans. I know from my own experience, even in some animal political parties, the person standing may not even be a vegan.
So interesting, right?
Yeah.
And what a difference, because when you think about all the different social justice movements, when someone is standing up and being emotional and really pushing uh, the cause that they're championing, it is very common and easy to think, wow, this really means something to this person. They are so committed to changing, making this change, making sure that something happens and whatever it is that they're talking about changes. And then Claire makes this really good point that sometimes it isn't about that thing at all. It's what it
Mhm.
represents to them on the inside and that allows that emotion to come up. But when it comes down to actually making or committing to living in a way that actually aligns with whatever that change is that you're trying to push, that's where we differ. That's what makes it easy for somebody to be like, okay, I'm not I'm not going to be part of this anymore because whatever it was inside of them that was connecting them to this movement, maybe they've worked through or they're back in denial about and they're not really connecting to it anymore. But
Mhm.
like for somebody, like I know for me, my veganism is so much a part of who I am and so much encouraged and created by my desire for animals to not suffer, for
Mhm.
our food system to change, that I will be uncomfortable. I will forego things that I used to love. Over the course of since I went vegetarian almost 25 years ago, there have been so many things in my life that I have stopped doing, that I have stopped giving money to, that I have
Mhm.
stopped in, things I used to enjoy because I realized either it was blatant, like consuming animals, or I never went to the circus, but something like that, like somebody who enjoyed going to the circus because they liked to see animals. When you understand why that's not a good place for animals and how they
Mhm.
are harmed, doesn't matter how much you loved going to the circus. What you love is not as meaningful as what you're standing for. And
Mhm.
so for me, I will be uncomfortable. I will stop doing things that I love. I will stop spending time with people if they will only do things that are not in alignment with my values. And like, that's the sacrifice that I'm willing to make. It's not emotional. It is driven by my want to see the world be a kinder, gentler, more compassionate place. And I love that Claire points that out because I don't think I'd ever thought of it that way, that there are
Mhm.
people that are so engaged right now just because it's an emotion they are working on and this represents something in their own life instead of it being for the animal's sake. And then also the reminder to follow the money because, my guess is that influencer that you and I talked about before, that's probably the motivation for them. But
Mhm.
what came up for you and from that clip?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about a certain restaurant we talked about last summer that
Uh-huh.
went vegan. That was and Earthling Ed did a great video on that restaurant when it had happened. They went vegan supposedly because they were upset and outraged about what was happening to animals. And then flash forward to last summer, we are being inclusive
Mm,
and we're going to now write inclusive,
mhm,
and now we're going to offer animal products as well, right? And so that instantly came to mind, right? And then that influencer that you reminded me of, yeah, same thing, right? Like
mhm,
following the money. And so, yeah, people, I think they're reacting to something, and I think there's a subconscious thing that's at work, right? So in the moment, it may seem like they're in a line with whatever the cause is, but then there's a deeper issue, there's a deeper thing at play that they don't realize, right? You don't know. Sometimes we don't know what's going on behind the scenes in our brains until we bring it to the surface,
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's why I have XYZ issue, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it makes sense that it's the only way something would make sense and something like this. There is some other motivator here. And like you, Kimberly, like I feel like once I became aware of, veganism and what it all stands for, it helped me create an awareness with my values and realize, ooh, I'm a little bit unaligned.
Mhm.
Right? Like I'm a good person, but I'm still eating animals.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, right? And I think
Mhm.
again, like we can do better when we know better. And you and I've talked about this before, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah. So anyway, I think that was a really great point that she brought up.
Yeah. So we are already at 45 minutes.
Yes.
I honestly, the way that it loads in StreamYard, I can't tell how much time is left on Claire's clip.
I think we're
So-
almost done because I had notes and I think we're towards the end of it. But
Okay, let's see if we can get through this
yeah.
and wrap it up so that we're not going too long.
People into doing
Yeah,
this.
sounds
So we
good.
have to be really wary. We live in an era where somehow people think it's valuable that they just should have their say. They become outraged even if it has no bearing on the victims or the issues are not even fully understood. But it's important. I have my voice, they say. Now, the existential writer Kierkegaard said, people rarely make use of the freedom of thought, so they use freedom of speech as a compensation. Now, we don't know why Toni Vanelli has changed her eating habits, but also is publicly rubbished things like veganuary and veganism and coming up with a lot of ridiculous notions that, we just can do what we like. We don't have to have a bearing in changing things. We just have to throw money at charities and things will change. Well, the outer is the inner, and we are all part of creating a kinder world. We don't know why she's done this, and she has the ear of media to get on the front page. But I think we have some indicators there that there's a little bit more going on. But we do know that this also is not really veganism. When we focus on eating or not eating meat, we are moving away from not focusing on the suffering and the incarceration of animals. It depersonalizes them to body parts or meat. But to the vegan community, I encourage us all not to spend energy on dissecting this self-centered behavior. And when you're in conversations with not yet vegans, the non-vegan world, so to speak, even if they bring up issues around food or climate or lifestyle, meet them where they're at, but very quickly explain to them that veganism is about the non-use and non-exploitation of animals. But the definition I like is by Dr. Will Tuttle, who wrote The World Peace Diet, when he said, veganism is a philosophy of loving kindness towards ourselves, towards all other people, towards all living beings who are not human, and also to all ecosystems. And when we look at the issues to do with Toni Vanelli, she's not being kind to herself, she's not being kind to others, she's certainly not being kind to animals, or the effect that lifestyle will have on ecosystems. Show people that not eating the body parts or secretions of living sentient beings is just one of the outcomes of that philosophy. Focus on a vision of the world we want to create, a kinder vegan world. Align yourself from within and learn to communicate with influence in a way that is not shaming or blaming, because then people are able to shoot the messenger instead of feeling that disconnect between their espoused values of being kind and not causing harm and their actions. Thank you to the Vegan Morning Show for airing this issue, because it's very important. And it's very important for us as vegans to stay the course. Right is on our side. Veganism is accelerating at a great rate. So don't watch for sensationalist pieces that might take us from our focus. Thank you.
I know, right? So good.
Thank you, Claire.
Yes, thank you, Claire, so much.
I love how she just eloquently brought it all together. And, what came to mind are a couple of books that we've talked about or with each other and read. Hungry Beautiful Animals by Matt Haltman made me kind of think about that. And Angela Crawford's book, The Vegan Transformation, right? Like there's all these things that when you're vegan, it goes beyond the meat that's on the plate, right? And how it's just, we call it meat, right? Instead of, chicken carcass,
Right.
or right, milk instead of animal secretions, right? We have to give it another term to make it more palatable, right? But those two books came to mind when listening to that clip, because I feel like those two books address all the other things about being a vegan and how there's just so many layers to it. So yeah. What about you, Kimberly?
Yeah, I like that she appreciated that we're bringing this, we're addressing this, and I think we have to. We're a live show.
Yeah.
We're about veganism. It's a big thing. People are having a lot of feelings about it, and so it's important that we have a chat about it. But I love that she's like, just put it away now and focus on what we're doing. And focus on creating that opportunity for conversation where we can really help people connect to the true meaning of veganism, which is to stop the exploitation of animals and to build this kinder, gentler world. And I think that we can do that. And, you and I love having these conversations and encouraging people to understand what veganism really is, to stop also, like, let's stop making it so much about the food. Of course the food is important. We eat multiple times a day. It's a significant piece of being vegan, but it's not the reason that we're vegan. We're vegan to stop the exploitation and suffering of animals. And one of the ways we do that is through food. And so I really appreciate that she's like, let's take it back to what we're doing here and remember what's behind and who is behind what we're doing. And I think that will lead to those conversations that she talked about, and the books that you mentioned, just kind of coming at it in a different way and showing people what's possible in creating this vegan world that we're so hopeful for, despite what people like this woman are putting out, on their own platforms.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more point I just want to add to that before we wrap up is, it's important to talk about it because we do want to clear up any confusion, because it does, there's a hurt and shock as vegans. And then again, it's ammunition for the non-vegans out there, right? It's another, oh, look, an ex-vegan, right?
Yeah. Or confusion for people who are like thinking about veganism, but then they're like, wait a minute, this lady did it for 30 years and now she's just making a different choice. Like, what is it? What does that mean? And we don't want them to question that. We want them to question themselves and how to get closer to being vegan. And so, by the way, for anyone who is watching, who is not yet vegan and is curious, or even if you're a new vegan and you've got a lot to learn and you want some support, some real live support, Jen and I are doing a Veganuary event. We start tomorrow, and we're meeting every Tuesday night from 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to share tons of valuable information. We're going to help you get on your journey, and we're going to help you work through these feelings that come up when something like this happens. So you'll find the link in the show notes. Sign up. We would love to have you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to do this with you, Kimberly. I think it'll be great. And just looking forward to, it's again, not about a judgment. It's just about showing people what's possible and just sharing education about the things that are hidden out there.
Absolutely. And thanks for hanging on for a long show. We try really hard to stick to the half hour, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So we really appreciate you hanging on and being here with us through the whole thing.
Absolutely. And thank you again, Claire, for sending us that clip. I feel like it added a lot of great value to our discussion. So thank you. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. Thanks. Bye.